You're lying in bed trying to sleep when you hear someone breathing in the room with you. But when you open your eyes, there's no one there. What do you do when the line between nightmare and reality starts to blur? You keep listening, and you'll find out. Some stories are best told when the lights are off, the doors are locked, and the world around you is silent. This is one of those stories. It's a tale of a house hidden in the middle of nowhere, a place where something ancient and terrifying lurks. Something that isn't supposed to exist in the real world, but yet it does. Grab your blanket, turn down the lights, and let's dive into a story that's not for the faint of heart. It started with a family moving into what seemed like a dream house, a perfect place to start fresh, to escape the city noise, and to build memories together. But from the moment they stepped inside, things didn't feel quite right. The air was thick, as though the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The walls whispered faintly at night, and shadows moved even when no one was there. They thought it was just the house settling, until the night the whispers started calling their names. The family's first few weeks were normal. Well, as normal as things can be when you're living on the edge of a small, secluded town. There was the mother, Sarah, who loved the idea of peace and quiet. Her husband, Mark, who was just happy to have a project to work on. And their two children, Mia and Lucas, who were thrilled with the space to run and play outside. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. It wasn't just the creaks in the walls or the strange drafts that seemed to come from nowhere. It was the way the house seemed aware of them, alive almost. The first night she noticed it was when she was in the kitchen, alone. The room was dim, lit only by the moonlight creeping through the window. As she stood by the sink, cleaning dishes, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. Her hair stood up. She spun around, expecting to see Lucas or Mia, but the kitchen was empty. Her pulse quickened. She was sure someone had just been standing behind her, but no one was there. As the days passed, things got worse. Mark thought she was just stressed out, maybe a little jumpy after the move. He didn't believe her when she told him about the whispers, soft voices calling her name in the dead of night. Mia and Lucas didn't help. They started to hear it too. They said they saw things in the shadows, faces, eyes, staring at them from the corners of their rooms, but no one else could see them. One evening when Sarah was alone again, the whispers got louder, clearer. It wasn't just a random murmur in the distance anymore. It was as if someone was standing right beside her, breathing in her ear, saying her name over and over. Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then the whispers started to change. You shouldn't be here, they said. We never left. She rushed to find Mark, but when she turned the corner to the living room, she froze. The room was empty, but the air was thick. The lights flickered, and then, in the reflection of the glass, she saw it. A figure standing just behind her, its face obscured in the shadows. It was tall, too tall, and its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed a sickly yellow. Mark didn't believe her. Not at first. He dismissed it as stress, exhaustion, maybe even the house's old wiring playing tricks on her. But when he started hearing it too, things changed. At night, the whispers would come again. Sometimes they'd wake him from a deep sleep, and sometimes they'd come while he was wide awake. And one night, just after midnight, he went into the attic, thinking it was just the house making noises. But he found something that would haunt him forever. Mark stood there in the dark attic, flashlight trembling in his hand. The air was damp, the smell of old wood and dust overpowering. The attic was cluttered with old boxes, forgotten furniture, and forgotten memories. But it wasn't what he expected that made his skin crawl. It was what he found buried beneath the floorboards. He pried open a section of the wooden floor with a crowbar, his heart racing. The whispering voices grew louder in his ears, and as he removed the last plank, he saw it. A small, leather-bound book, covered in dust. But it wasn't the book that made him freeze in place. It was the words written on the cover in a language that was both ancient and disturbing. The House of Forgotten Souls. Mark opened the book, and the moment he did, the whispers stopped. The entire house went silent. For the first time in weeks, it was as if everything had paused, but it was the silence that terrified him. Because in that silence, he realized something. The whispers had never been for Sarah. They had always been for him. As he read the first few lines of the book, the temperature in the attic dropped. His breath became visible in the air, and the walls began to hum. And then, from the corner of the attic, a shadow moved. A figure, its face hidden in darkness, slowly emerged from the shadows. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, but before he could scream, the figure reached out and grabbed him by the throat, pulling him closer. The last thing Mark saw before everything went black were those glowing yellow eyes staring into his soul. Sarah and the kids never saw Mark again. The house, it took him. No one in town believed her, of course. The police searched for days, but there was no sign of him. It was as though he vanished without a trace. But Sarah knew the truth. That night, she left the house, and she never looked back. To this day, the house still stands at the end of that lonely road, waiting for its next visitors, waiting for someone else to hear the whispers, to open the book, and to uncover the secrets hidden beneath its floorboards. If you ever find yourself passing by that house, you might hear it calling your name too. If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe and keep yourself up to date on more spine-chilling stories. You won't want to miss what's coming next.